Happy New Year and welcome to 2023. And I don't usually do lists on my channel, but I promised at the end of 2021 that I was going to start a gaming diary, which means for the first time ever, I've got a list of all the video games that I played in 2022. Most of them didn't come out in 2022 because, like a lot of people, I've got quite a long backlog. And also, old games are cheap and fun, and they don't require hours of your time. You can dip in and out of them. And I actually played a lot more games. I did play some more modern games, but I have compiled a list of 35 games across 2022 that I started and completed in 1 year. 35 games in 12 months. That's more than 2 a month. And some of these are big, long games. I've clearly spent too much time playing video games. And that means I can rank them. I've never done this before, but starting from worst to best, here's what I thought about 35 games and why you should play, or maybe you should avoid. So, the worst game that I played in 2022 was Sonic Boom: The Rise of Lyric. 2022 was actually a relatively good year for the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, and so to counter all the positivity, I had to go back and I had to see one of the many nadir of the franchises. Although I owned a Wii U, I skipped this when it came out back in 2014. I looked at it and I said, no, that's not the franchise I recognise. The weird thing is, I really like the Sonic Boom cartoon. I think that's a really, really fresh and fun visual cartoon animation that's funny. It takes a while to get with the humour, but it's got some genuinely strong episodes with some really cool, funny, funky ideas. The cartoon's great. The game, burn it with fire. This was awful. There were some mediocre ideas in here, but it runs awfully. It's slow. It's plodding. It might be better on multiplayer. But what is here? Sega, you did it again. But I've known that for almost 10 years now, so it doesn't surprise me, and it shouldn't be a shock to anyone that if anyone played this, it'd be towards the bottom of their played-in list. But marginally outcropping it, I played Sonic Boom at the end of the year. I started the year with Balan Wonderworld. There's some really good ideas in Balan Wonderworld. Yuji Naka actually did something quite interesting, but it puts the worst foot forward. It takes to half the way through the game for you to really get to the good stuff, and even then there's some weird design choices that just slow it down. There's a good game buried beneath all of the fluff in Balan Wonderworld, but it's 80% fluff. Third worst game of 2022, and this might surprise some people, I had a really bad reaction to Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. As in a really bad reaction to this game. I just couldn't get into it. I don't know why. I didn't play it on the hardcore settings, and that's the thing. A lot of the other Kingdom Hearts games I have played on the hardcore settings. This one, I think I went for normal, but the enemies were just bullet sponges, although there's no gun that's the closest approximation I can come to. I would be battering away with them and they just wouldn't die. It took far too long, and you died far too easily, and I was about 3/4 of the way through the game before our combat was actually working normally. They changed up the combat system for this game, and in my mind it was entirely for the worst. It didn't click with me. I couldn't killing enemies felt unrewarding. I was leveling up too slowly. I felt good 3/4 of the way through the game. There is some good stuff in here, but there's a level towards the end which is a musical orchestra level. I was playing almost for the promise. I was told that that level would redeem things, and it fell flat. The big plot twist at the end works. I can see why some people like this game, but for me, the combat was unrewarding, it was frustrating, the levels were big and empty, which is a criticism you can apply to a lot of Kingdom Hearts games, but they were bigger and emptier, and just this, almost, of the Kingdom Hearts games I've played, this is the worst. Marginally outperforming it was Team Sonic Racing. I played through the campaign mode, and I've played it multiplayer. Briefly, probably for about 2 or 3 races, and again there's some good ideas here, but it just doesn't work. The courses are too wide, don't have enough interesting things, because you've got to navigate. The idea of navigating how you're racing with 2 other teammates just doesn't pay off. It it never really clicked. It was never rewarding. You could never really control or give instructions to your teammates. But as a result of this functional change, though, the courses are big and they're empty and there's no challenge in them. It's a nice spectacle. It felt good to play through, but I don't look back on this game with any fondness. It didn't challenge me. It didn't excite me. It was boring.
Slightly outpacing it, it's a rather small game. At number 32, I'm proud to say I actually put some time and played an engineering simulation game. This is Rover Mechanic Simulator. Now, it's not a very long game, but I found it quite therapeutic. I only played this because it was offered for free on the condition I put a review up on my YouTube channel, but that was absolutely fine. It's not very expensive, and for accurate deconstructions using the real schematics of real Mars rovers that NASA has built and constructed, some quite interesting scientific equipment, it's weirdly fun. And in a similar vein, I also received for free on condition of review a game called 200 Ways, which is a marble running game I played on the Nintendo Switch, where you just move puzzle pieces around a board to enable a marble to roll and make its way through a very complex puzzle. It's actually a really fun little brain teaser, an excellent way to fill an afternoon. On the complete opposite end of the scale, number 30, my 30th best played game of 2022, could have been so much higher up this list if I'd only played through it once. There is a fantastic co-op experience in Resident Evil 5. I'd only ever experienced it single. I also played through it in single player, and it just doesn't really work. The game constantly pulls the same trick, which is overwhelming you with a high number of enemies. Now, that's something that you could argue its predecessor did as well, but it's designed for co-op play. I'm convinced that I always knew that. I'm now even more convinced of it. When there's two of you and you can split the crowd between you and pass ammo back and forth, this is a much more rewarding experience. On the single player, it's just deeply problematic. It's now, however, making me think that now I've experienced Resident Evil 5 in co-op, there might be something worth visiting about Resident Evil 6 played by the same means. Because if Resident Evil 5 is improved this much by co-op, maybe 6 will as well. That's not something I thought I'd hear myself saying at the start of 2022.
Number 29, Assassin's Creed Revelations. This is the third game in the trilogy that makes up the Assassin's Creed 2 part of the series. The third game using the same engine with the same characters as Assassin's Creed 2. It had some incremental changes, but none of those incremental changes excited me. In fact, some of them actively made the game worse. I'm not against the idea of new cities with new characters and the plot was one of the better things, but even that, I didn't need to go and see the latter parts of Ezio's life, and what we learned about Altair, the protagonist from the original Assassin's Creed, isn't interesting. I would definitely say this is one of the most skippable Assassin's Creed entries in the series. Number 28, Sonic Colors Ultimate. And this annoyed me. I expected this to be better. I didn't play this game until the patches had come out, until Sega had had a chance to fix the mess. When this game originally released, it had a lot of bugs and a lot of issues. I quite enjoyed Sonic Colors on the Wii. I'd rather go back and play the Wii version of the game than this. It just rubbed me up the wrong way. For all sorts of reasons. But that's for another video. Number 27, Jurassic World Evolution 2. I like this game. It's not a style of game I usually play. I got it cheap. I enjoyed playing through it. I will go back and build some more dinosaur theme parks because that's a rewarding experience. It's fun to look at. It's fun to play. The DLC is not worth it. Don't bother with the DLC. Number 26. It's a retro game, The Wheel of Time. This is a very early three-dimensional PC game based on the Robert Jordan book series. It's very loosely tied to the canon. In fact, it's not at all. I enjoyed it. It was difficult. It was challenging. It took me back to the late 90s and what PC games were like at that time. If you've got any interest in video game history, this is a weird, obscure one. I recommend it. Go check it out. Number 25. So into the top 25 video games played in 2022. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. And the only reason this isn't higher is because I haven't completed it. Because the final boss just irritates me. This had a really good... The core of Bloodstained was really fulfilling. When I first explored the castle, I loved it. I visited 99% completion rate. But the grind to level the character up sufficiently for me to be able to take down the final boss, I just gave up. There's too much backtracking, too much going over enemies you're going to get the crafting mechanics, to collect all the items you need to create all the meals, or to get enough money to buy the ingredients. This is the aspect of gaming, and I put a video out at the start of 2022 saying, this is what I hate about gaming, find a game that I like. And I played this game at the end of 2022 and it's reinforced that ideal. I hate crafting mechanics. And yes, you don't necessarily need them, but without them, that final boss is ridiculously hard. This game demanded that you went and upgraded your items and weapons and got all the best food to upgrade your stats. And it's not fun. The core game, the first 10 hours of Bloodstained were fantastic. But by hour 16, I just had to put down the controller and go, no. And I might come back and do it one day, but this game could and should have been so much better. Why do people ruin perfectly good action-adventure games by cramming them full of crafting mechanics? Number 24. And speaking of crafting, it's Ratchet & Clank. This is the PlayStation 4 remake of the first game, and as a remake it fails utterly. But as a platformer, it's good. It's perfectly strong. This is a fine game to play. If you've never touched a Ratchet & Clank game before, pick it up. Number 23. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, the second of the 3 Assassin's Creed True trilogy. This one had some nice ideas. It was fun to explore Rome. I've got very close to completion. I've upgraded all of the assassins to rank 10, and that was the best bit about this game, upgrading, like recruiting an army to do your assassinations for you. It did make the game very easy, however, so it definitely didn't have much of a challenge for me. It's just a completionist that Ubisoft map problem of tick boxing, and yes, completion. I've played the Assassin's Creed game before. This was a revisit. It was a fun revisit, but I did this because I wanted to rather than because I got much enjoyment out of it, if that makes sense. I did enjoy it. It's a good game. Number 22. The Witness. First time playing through this very deep, very complex puzzle game. I had to cheat for a few of them. There were just some puzzles in there, but not many. I did more than I expected to. This game has almost no instructions, almost no dialogue. You play it all by intuition of finding complex environmental puzzles and working your way through to... I'm not even sure what you complete at the end of it. It's a bigger, more ambitious game than the puzzle games I mentioned earlier, and this is not my gaming forte. But do you know what? I enjoyed it, and despite the times I cheated, that felt like part of the challenge. It was my way of getting to the end. Number 21. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. Better than Dream Drop Distance. The reason this is so low is because you effectively have to replay the same game 3 times. And that sounds bad. It's not as bad as it sounds. The 3 characters that you play the game as, although they go through the same environments, their levels are not the same. You go through different parts of each area. So there's overlap, there's definitely overlap, but they play just sufficiently enough differently. There's some interesting stuff with the combat and the crafting. Again, crafting, why does that let every game down I touch? Number 20. Return to Monkey Island. I've never completed a Monkey Island game from start to finish before. This is the first one in the series that has hooked me the entire way from start to finish, and I'm so glad I did, because although I've never finished the series, I've played a lot of it going back over 20 years, and the aesthetics, the storyline, I adore it. This was a fantastic entry. So I suppose from here on I can wholeheartedly recommend everything with no drawbacks. Number 19, Psychonauts. I'd never played this when it came out on the Xbox. I was told time and time again it's a fantastic platformer, and it is. Some of the side quests were a little bit annoying. I wanted to upgrade my character and there was just some running around searching on the map for stuff, but the core storyline, the core gameplay, despite some hiccups from it being a relatively early 3D platformer, solid thumbs up for Psychonauts. Number 18, Sonic Origins. Now this might be controversial because I could have put it much higher, I could have put it much lower. As a port of Sonic 1 to 3 and Knuckles, it's widescreen, it's using the Taxman engine, it plays relatively well. It's got some atrocious bugs that weren't in the original games, and the music in Sonic 3, the replacement music, is abysmal. So as a port, frustrating, nearly perfect, but the gaps and the errors pull it down so far. But that said, Sonic 1, 2, 3 and Knuckles are some of the finest 16-bit games in history, and this is a perfectly solid way to play them for new players. The fact the widescreen makes them so much more fun, and yes, I've put tons of hours into Sonic Origins. It gets a thumbs up from me despite my reservations. Celeste, a new 2D platform, and this is a couple of years old. I finally dug in and completed it. It's really fun. The story is light and unintrusive, but really gives you a drive to complete it. This is a game that challenges you as a platformer player, but it challenges you in the best way possible. Really thumbs up to the developers. Number 16, Kloana Fantasy Reverie series. This is a franchise I missed out on the first time round. I'd never really played Kloana 1 or 2. They're collected here. The first time playing through them, I had a great time. This is above Celeste and Sonic Origins purely because I don't think it's a better game. I'd probably put number 16, 17, 18 as tied for that part in the series. All three of them great 2D platforms. I'm glad I revisited them this year. Number 15, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Of the new Survivor trilogy Tomb Raider games starring Lara Croft, I'd say this is the weakest. Possibly because it's also the longest. It might be shorter than Rise. I spent longer on this game. I put more hours into this game than I have Rise of the Tomb Raider, and I don't think I got more for it. One of the things that really annoys me about these last two Tomb Raider games, the good stuff, a lot of the tombs, a lot of them are optional or they're side quests, and that I don't feel rewarded for searching them out and exploring them. I'm right at the point of saying either it's a core part of the game and you should be forced through it, or you should cut it out. And it feels weird saying that for this open world experiment with Tomb Raider. I don't think it's worked. At least it needs to be revamped a bit to carry on. There's a lot of really good stuff in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but far too much of it just felt like separated from the main adventure and not rewarding in its own right, and that's a problem. Number 14, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. It's probably only so far up this list because it's short. I completed it in about 3 days and maybe 4 playing sessions. Great fun, but it hasn't left a strong memory on me. And if I ever want to go back for more Uncharted action, I'll go for one of the other Uncharted games. It's definitely the most forgettable. Number 13, Rise of the Tomb Raider has many of the same problems I said about Shadow, but it's a bit more compact and the story is a little bit more compelling. Actually, I think the story for Shadow is technically better, but I don't think it's told as efficiently. Rise is very well told, and it holds together as a bit more of a condensed package, so I put it slightly higher. Number 12, Assassin's Creed 2. The first of the 3 games in the Ezio trilogy is in my mind the strongest. It did a lot of new innovative stuff. It was the first really playable and fun Assassin's Creed game. Ezio is a fantastic character, but this is the only story you need to play of his trilogy. What came in Brotherhood and Revelations was just extra, it was more baggage, whereas this is the raw, visceral stuff that I wanted to see. There's a reason a lot of people still applaud this as a fantastic Assassin's Creed 2 game. It's aged. All games of this era have aged. But it's still worth revisiting, and as a cheap retro game, wholeheartedly recommend going towards this. Number 11, and I feel bad for not putting this in my top 10, but I'm very happy with what's in my top 10, so the poor outlier has to be Final Fantasy XII, Zodiac Age, which I was expecting to be higher because I love Final Fantasy XII. It's one of my favourite Final Fantasies. I'm going to have to do a video about this game because it's fantastic, and the storyline is one of the best told Final Fantasies. It's also one of the most misunderstood Final Fantasies, and that's potentially what draws me to it. But just out-edging it is number 10, Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition, the re-release on the Switch. They redid the graphics, and it looks fine. I was perfectly happy with the graphics on the Wii. This is just a bloody fine game, no matter what console you play it on. The original Xenoblade Chronicles is brilliant and deserves your time. Number 9, Resident Evil 2, the remake on the PlayStation 4. I finally went back and completed it. I did 3 playthroughs. I did a Claire first, then Leon second to get the full story, and then on easy mode I did a speed run of Leon without any healing. And which means I've unlocked most of the trophies. The one thing is because, there's some trophies I haven't unlocked in the game, but I really feel like I've seen 99% of what it has to offer. And I have some criticisms, but it's a very fine remake. If you're interested in a horror game and you want it's definitely more, if you're interested in an out-and-out classic horror game, I would push anyone towards Resident Evil 2's remake. Number 8. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now in time this might slip down. I completed Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in a relatively rapid time. Over the summer, I played it on release and it still holds very high in my estimation. It had one of the best plot twists in any RPG I've ever seen. This is Persona 5 levels of intimacy with the main characters and going, what? No, how could they do that? It just completely upends everything you think you know about the main heroes and the villains, but not in a predictable, atrocious way. It's fundamentally tied to who the characters are and what they're fighting against and what they're fighting for. I've very rarely been as emotionally invested. That said, there's a lot of junk around the edges in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I know a lot of people really adore the side quests here. Me, I felt like I was plodding a lot of time over and missing the good stuff. And also, inherently, I was bothered by backtracking when the whole point of the game is you've got a time-sensitive objective to travel across the globe. And in a weird way, the open map design where you can fast travel anywhere, back and forth, works against the story. Maybe I'm unique for that bothering me, but it did. Number 7. I finally went black and said I'm going to complete a From Software game because everyone said that 2022 is the year of Elden Ring. So, because I wanted to complete a From Software game, I went back and played Bloodborne, which is brilliant. I've bounced off a few From Software games before. It's not the difficulty. I can hack it, and I've proved by beating Bloodborne. I can hack it, you can do it. But the time and the resilience and the patience to memorize attack patterns, it's not my favourite style of gaming, and kind of why I avoided Elden Ring, because open world, side quests and waffle, I prefer condensed games that present an interesting and well meted out challenge to you to overcome. The exploration, the side quests, as I think I've demonstrated in the series, it's just waffle. It spreads the experience out, but makes it overall less fun. Bloodborne, big open areas, but with condensed, compact, and high intensity gameplay. It's a fantastic game. I can see why, in the early days of the PlayStation 4, everyone was raving about this. Number 6. And here's another controversial Sonic title. I couldn't put Sonic Frontiers in my top 5, but do you know what? I adored the game. It's finally the franchise, for the first time in over a decade, feels like it's found a relatively stable footing. Doesn't mean it's a wholeheartedly positive experience. It still has some awful ideas, including the final boss rubbed me up the wrong way like nothing else it did this year. There is, at the end of the final boss, a quick time event. Now, in every other quick time event in the game, you mash the button to beat the quick time event. Every other quick time event in the game is about mashing the button. But in the final boss, there is a quick time event which has a meter that runs from 0 to 10 very quickly, and you have to hit it around 6 or 7. Too low or too high, and it fails. Fail it twice in a row, you die, you have to redo the entire boss again. And it's a very slow boss that you can only damage at a set rate. You can't get better and force your way through it. It takes about 10 minutes to beat, and it's a very hard and challenging boss that I died at least 5 or 6 times to get to the end. I must have beaten that boss 15 times before I finally, on the 4th attempt, passed the QuickTime event. This is awful game design. Sonic Team, even when you're fantastic, you irritate me like nobody else. Number 5. Resident Evil 4. There's a re-release coming up soon. I had to go back and visit the original game whilst it's still, hopefully, untarnished, one of the best games in history. Because it is. It took me about 5 minutes to get my head around the fact it's still got something approximating tank controls. 5 minutes to get my head in gear and go, oh yeah, This is how it controls. And from that moment on, this game is nothing but pure, unadulterated fun. I can see why some horror fans might prefer other games, because this is not actually that scary. It's more tense. It's more excitement. It will freak you out, but it won't ever overwhelm you. Number 4, Nier Automata. I had to go back and do the second, well, I'd already done the second, but the third and the fourth playthrough this year, because there's extra levels, extra storytelling. Now I've finally seen the whole thing. This is just a beautiful experience with a beautiful soundtrack. Number 3, Horizon Zero Dawn. I know there's been a sequel to this out, but I've played the first one through. It's a really good game, and it's going to be the highest open world game ranking I think I'll ever play. I have completed most of the side quests, but it irritated me no end that I had to hunt stuff. There's so much hunting now, and it's got crafting mechanics in it, just so much stuff that should annoy me, but the game has stuck with me. The storyline, the characters, the moment to moment gameplay. I still maintain this game could have worked as an arena based shooter where the good bit of the game, the giant dinosaurs and the robots and the monsters, are brought to Alone, and she has to fight her way through them and sort of like a quest or a trail. I can see why they made it the way they did, and it's top 3 of the games I played this year. But it could have been better. Number 2, this could not have been better. And maybe this could have been number 1, but I'm putting it number 2 because it's thematically appropriate. It Takes Two. This compulsory 2-player game, I've played it twice. I've played it local co-op and online co-op. I've played as both Rhodey and May, the 2 main characters. They've got very at different points in the game, very different gameplay where you're either pulling or pushing. It's so inventive. I think some of the levels go on a little bit too long, and that's not because I got bored. I just wanted a change of scenery. Now the thing is, they're constantly throwing new ideas, new mechanics. It all fits together beautifully. It's mechanically one of the most sound games I've ever played. I kind of just think it could have had the same amount of content, exactly the same mechanics, and been 8 levels rather than 5. And that's a really, really minor criticism to have. I adored this game on both playthroughs. It's a good game to introduce someone who's never played video games before. If you're new to gaming, check this out. My partner played this game, and one of the main characters is a voice actress from The Archers, and I think she tolerated the game purely for that fact. Yeah, we're getting old. But my top game of 2022, I completed it at the start of the year because I'd actually been playing it at the end of 2021. It was kind of my New Year's game. Is, in my mind, one of the best games I've ever played. Kingdom Hearts 2. It annoys me that the sequels to this game I've ranked so low on my playthrough this year, because this game just had everything. It's got Disney characters I'm nostalgic for. It's got Final Fantasy characters I'm nostalgic for. The combat is the most fulfilling, most exciting, most feel good. The length of it, the pacing of it, the storyline. I've put a video out on my channel this year telling you why, if you've never played it before, Kingdom Hearts 2 is worth your time. And anyone who's heard anyone complaining that the plot and the storyline of the Kingdom Hearts games is complex and weird, there are some things this game does which will put a few people off. But no, this is the last game before that complexity hit the series like a freight train. This game makes absolute perfect sense on its own. It almost never needed a sequel. It's perfect. This is gaming perfection from a long time ago. And I've played lots of really good games this year. And yeah, I think I'd hardly recommend all but 2.5. I'd recommend all but 2.5 the games on this list. You may notice if a game's genuinely bad, don't complete it. And then don't put it in your list because you didn't complete it. Just walk away. We've all got better things to do with our life. Look on the positive side. This is 32.5 fantastic games. Half a game that there's a brilliant game in there but it annoyed me, and 2 games that I would say to you, they're footnotes in history. Don't play Balan Wonderworld, and don't play Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. But whatever else you do in 2023 or beyond, have fun and Happy New Year.